At dawn, the mist clings low to the sodden thatch of a lone cottage. A distant bell chimes once, deep, hollow, a sound that seems to roll through the wet earth itself. Chickens rustle in a straw pen, dew beads along the iron hinges of a crooked wooden gate. In the stillness, smoke curls from a hearth, mixing with the scent of peat and boiled nettles. The village stirs like a single living body, heavy with breath and memory. The reeve moves first. His boots slosh through the muck, each step a slow communion with the earth he governs but does not own. A man of thresholds, between power and the people, between silence and decree. He touches each lintel as if in benediction, fingers rough with seasons. These doorways are not merely wood and iron, but passageways between night and day, hunger and harvest. His presence does not wake the village. It acknowledges it, confirms it still lives, still waits. The manor watches him. Not grand, no, but stern and certain. Its wooden beams are dark with time, its shutters closed like eyes that have seen too much. It stands like a fist wrapped in linen, quiet but dangerous. This is the village's brain, the keeper of tally and tithe, judgment and grain. And beyond it, like limbs stretched in longing, the fields wait, aching, soaked, already bracing for another day of toil. Women gather near the well, their fingers numb, their breath visible in the cold. The bucket rope creaks like an old hymn. Their silence is not empty, it is dense, ancient. It hums beneath their shawls, passes between cracked palms. Words cost too much here. Their strength is spent on motion, drawing water, lifting, carrying, enduring. Beside them, children race barefoot over the frozen mud, quick and bright as sparrows. But even their laughter is fleeting, swallowed by the wind, as though joy must pay its due as well. In the alehouse, before the fire is even stirred, the tanner's wife lights a tallow candle. The flame flickers uncertainly, a fragile defiance against the thick, smoky dark. It smokes upward toward the beams, curling like a soul unsure where to rise. In the corner, an old man coughs in his sleep. Outside, the world waits, but in here, time hesitates, cradled in warmth, breath, and the sweet sting of barley mash. Everywhere, the scent of work is rising. Scorched wood from ovens, damp wool on stones, the bitter tang of oxen in the byre. A rhythm pulses beneath it all, older than memory, one not taught but inherited. It governs when to sow and when to kneel, when to slaughter and when to sing. No path in the village leads straight. Everything bends, stone paths, thatch lines, even the light. The sun, when it comes, does not blaze. It seeps, cautious and slow, through the lace of mist and smoke. The days are not measured in hours, but in tasks. Feed the pigs, turn the compost, mend the fence before the frost deepens. And if the work is done early, they do not rest. They prepare for what tomorrow may bring. The village knows what it is, unseen by kings, unmapped by chroniclers. It exists in the folds of a forgotten parchment, scrawled in the margins of history. But it breathes. It remembers. Inside the church, the bell rings again, not to summon, but to remind. Its tone is not a command, but a covenant. A deep, aching reminder that time is not something they chase, but something they carry. On their backs, in their bones, in every frost-bitten joint and prayer-muttered chore. Time is weight. Time is wound. Time is the echo between hoofbeats and hailstones. The reeve lingers at the chapel door. His eyes drift not to the altar, but to the worn floorboards where generations have knelt. Faith, here, is not grandeur. It is habit, breath, the choice to hope when hope seems absurd. He crosses himself without thinking, not because he believes, but because he cannot afford not to. A child cries in the distance, a rooster protests the wind, and the village exhales, not in peace, but in persistence. These people are not free, but they are not broken. Their bondage is not just to the Lord or the land, but to each other. Invisible cords bind them, the shared grief of stillbirth, the laughter over burnt porridge, the exchanged glance when a calf survives the night, obligation, hunger, belief. These are the things that hold the world together. And so, as the mist lifts slightly and the mud begins to firm beneath boots and bare feet, life begins again. The baker stokes his oven, face ruddy with heat. A widow sweeps a doorstep already clean. A boy chases a wooden hoop through puddles that mirror the gray, unpromising sky. Nothing is new, but everything matters. Because to endure is to defy, to kneel beside a dying cow and still sing to it, to whisper a prayer over seed scattered into frozen ground, to hang a charm above a cradle carved with names already worn away. These are their rebellions, small but relentless. The manor's door creaks open. The steward appears, parchment in hand, eyes like polished flint. Soon the tallying will begin, of grain, of wool, of labor owed, the world of numbers intruding upon the world of breath. But not yet. For a moment, the village holds its breath with the wind, suspended, sacred. And in that pause, a girl in the field holds out her hand, palm upturned, waiting to catch the first flake of snow. It lands and melts and is gone, but she smiles. And somewhere beyond the hills, where the forest thickens and the old road disappears into frost and folklore, a figure walks, cloaked, alone, toward the village, toward the next chapter. The wind moves first, curling around the timber ribs of the village like an unseen god. It sifts through wheat sheaves, hung to dry beneath low eaves, rattles a loose shutter, stirs a dog sleeping near the embers of last night's fire. The village does not rise all at once. It unfurls, slow, reluctant, sacred. A breath, then another. Life wakes not with shouts, but with the careful silence of survival. At the edge of the fields, a shepherd kneels. His knees sink into the damp earth, and the cold leaks into his bones like memory. He binds a splintered staff with strips of leather cut from an old belt, his fingers clumsy from the cold and from age. His sheep press close, their wool like mist clinging to the morning air, their breath clouding in ghostly plumes. They murmur, not frightened, not yet, just waiting, as they always do. Behind his eyes is 1,000-yard stare, not toward battle, but toward time, the long grind of repetition, days layered like ash. His hands are not marked by war, but by weather, bark, bone, and silence. The path from his hut curves like a forgotten prayer. It passes the hedge witch's garden, where jars hang like teeth from the boughs. Roots twist like veins, drying in the brittle sun. Bones rattle in the wind, light as leaves, but heavier with meaning. She watches from her doorway, her face lined like carved wood, eyes set in sockets too old for fear. Her fingers move in circles over a bundle of mugwort, whispering to something unseen. Here, magic does not sparkle, it smolders. Beyond her, the shrine stands broken. Ivy has swallowed its stone face, strangling the saint who once held back the dark. No one remembers his name now. Perhaps it was taken during the last winter, when 6 children died in 1 week, and even the steward stopped speaking Latin. A crow nests in the saint's hollow eyes. The village has its own gods now, older, hungrier, quieter. The village center breathes from a single heart, the bakehouse. The oven is alive, round, warm, and scarred. A furnace that remembers each fire, each famine. It was built by hands long buried, fired with the same wood that now burns in its belly. It glows with the quiet heat of endurance. Villagers arrive one by one, loaves wrapped in linen. Each loaf bears a mark, a thumbprint, a cross, a line of wheat pricked into dough. The marks are not decoration. They are prayers, protection, offerings, a mother's plea, a father's bargain, a widow's memory. Beside the oven sits an old woman with a veil the color of soot. Her fingers are knotted like old roots. She counts each loaf aloud, not for commerce, but for remembrance. Each name passes her lips like a psalm. Edith, son of no one. Thomas, of the flax road. Alwyn, with the crooked eye. Some names she sings. Others she merely exhales, like letting go of smoke. She never forgets a face. She is not a record keeper. She is a mourner, dressed in ash. The steward waits within the great hall, hunched over parchment, stained with time and wax. The fire beside him crackles, but it does not warm him. His quill scratches endlessly, tallying births, measuring barley, weighing debts. Latin drips from his mouth like candle wax, mixing with Anglo-Saxon murmurs. His words carry the law of men, but they cannot command the wind or the worms. Outside these walls, language is simpler. Hunger, frost, the scream of a hawk. His ink records survival, not success. A child skips past the hall, a little girl, no older than 7. In her basket, crushed eggshells carefully dried and powdered by her mother. She scatters them across the path leading to the sowing fields, a line of white-like bone fragments in the mud. She doesn't know why she does it, only that it must be done. Her grandmother did the same, and her grandmother before that. It is a ritual older than the steward's ink. She hums to herself, off-key, soft, and full of the world's unknowable rules. Each door frame in the village bears a charm. Some are simple, a knotted thread, a dried sprig of hawthorn. Others are hidden, salt buried in the threshold, iron nails crossed beneath the hearth. These are not meant to repel armies. They cannot hold back swords or fire, but they are stronger in their own way. They guard against the quiet horrors, the fever that steals a child overnight, the rot that creeps beneath the skin, the silence that follows a bad harvest. The charms are tokens of desperation dressed as hope. There is no church bell here, no spire pointing heavenward. The village's faith lies in muscle and mud, in firewood stacked against frost, in herbs brewed bitter against plague. The land is both enemy and mother, offering wheat one year and stone the next. No one rules this village from a throne. It is governed by rhythm and memory, by the shape of hands pressed into dough, by the pace of the shepherd's step, by the old widow's counting, by the steward's ink that will one day fade. The village is not a place, it is a pact, a whispered promise between the living and the dead, between the past and the not yet. The sun rises higher now, spilling gold over thatch and timber. Smoke coils into the sky, and chickens mutter like gossiping crones. Somewhere a boy shouts, a dog barks, a baby begins to cry. Life here does not leap, it lingers, and as the village stirs fully, a shadow shifts along the tree line. A rider, not yet close enough to name, not yet close enough to fear, but coming. The shepherd sees him first. He straightens, squinting into the wind, his splintered staff gripped tight in calloused hands. The old widow stops her counting. The hedge witch turns to face the path. The wind stills. Something has changed. And just like that, the promise of the village is tested. And somewhere beyond the fields, beyond the hedge, beyond the ancient shrine, a bell tolls for a village not yet burning. The crow lands with a rasp, the sound of claw on straw, brittle as bone. Its eyes, ink-dark and knowing, scan the frozen thatch, then the silent world below. No call escapes its throat. It merely watches. From the rooftops, from the edges of breath and time, it watches. Beneath, the village lies in suspended stillness, cradled by the land like something half-remembered, half-feared. Chimney smoke drifts slow and blue in the hush before labor, curling as if reluctant to rise. No rooster dares break the silence. Even the wind holds its breath. And then, the priest. He steps from the chapel with the weight of centuries in his spine, each movement a whispered negotiation between age and duty. His robes are frayed at the cuffs, stained with the soot of decades. The The censer swings at his side like a pendulum, marking not time, but something older, deeper. The Latin he mutters is worn thin with repetition, not meant to be understood, only felt, like a lullaby for the land, or a warning. He traces the village's edge, where field turns to bramble, and bramble to forest, where the known ends and the remembered begins. His breath ghosts out before him. The censer smokes behind. He walks as if the boundary itself might tear, if not watched. In the tannery, life smells of death. Raw hides stretch taut, nailed to wooden racks like offerings to a forgotten god. The air bites with cold and rot, with lime and blood and lie. The tanner's son works without expression, stirring a vat that swallows the morning whole. His hands, too young for such work, move with grim precision. There is no pride here, only endurance, only duty. Outside, the rhythm picks up, not with joy, but inevitability. Iron rings out in the forge, its echo dull and constant. Women kneel by worn boards, pounding flax into thread with stone mallets. The pigs squeal as boys herd them past the village edge, where the woods stretch out like an open jaw. Each task, an inheritance. Each silence, a law. The manor steward walks through the market square, boots leaving sharp prints in frost. He speaks little, but sees everything. His fingers move over each egg, each turnip, as if weighing not just their worth, but their defiance. He notes what is missing, who was late, what was hidden, and though no whip cracks, none is needed. The village moves as it must. Even prayers are measured in his ledger, though he cannot read the scriptures. But still, there are things that resist tally. A sprig of lavender tied with red thread, tucked in the corner of a thatched roof. A bone comb carved with a fox's face, placed gently beside a sleeping child. A cradle shaped by hand, its grain smoothed by sleepless nights and soft lullabies. These things do not yield. They cannot be bought. They are the soul of this place. They are what hold it together when the ice tightens its grip and hunger knocks without apology. By the stream, the girl kneels, her cloak gathered beneath her to keep dry what little warmth remains. She strikes the ice with her heel, cracking it open with a sound like breaking glass. The water below gurgles, resentful at being disturbed. She cups it in her hands, the cold biting her palms, and drinks as if it matters, because it does. Behind her, the surface seals again, whole, deceptive, as if untouched. This is how the village endures, not through triumph, but repetition, not through conquest, but memory. Break, heal, forget, begin again, and in the tower, the bell tolls. It does not ask for permission. It simply declares the day has begun, as it has always begun, and as it always will, until it doesn't. A sparrow flits past the chapel window. A dog barks once and falls silent. A child coughs behind a shutter. Life moves, but only barely. The priest returns, censer spent, lips dry with prayer. The steward marks another tally. The tanner's son turns the hides once more, and the girl at the stream watches her reflection vanish beneath the forming ice. She does not cry, but she does not smile either. In the forest beyond, unseen but felt, something shifts. A crow lifts from the barn's roof and arcs into the sky, its wings slicing through the morning like a black oath. And somewhere, far off, too distant to name, a sound begins. Not thunder, not hooves, something older. But for now, the village remains, suspended in frost, in breath, in the soft rebellion of survival. Tomorrow will come, or not, but today has begun, and it will end. A wolf howls, far off in the dark line of the forest. The sound rolls through the trees like smoke, curling into the cold air above the thatched roofs. But no one startles, no one clutches a blade. The howl is not a threat, it is a reminder that there is a world beyond the reach of firelight, a world older than plows, wilder than prayers. The village listens not in fear, but in acknowledgement. The wolf calls, and the village listens. Inside the walls, the world is smaller, quieter. Life turns in circles, drawn by unseen hands. The same paths walked yesterday are walked again today, feet treading grooves into frozen mud. The rhythm is sacred, bounded, repeating. Morning arrives not in sun rays, but in smells. Damp hay, alderwood smoke, a thread of porridge scent curling out from the iron pot hanging over the hearth. The headman wakes first, always first. His hut, hunched at the edge of the fields, bears the brunt of wind that comes hard off the hills, wind that speaks a language too sharp for sleep. He drinks from a horn cup, water soured with vinegar, steeped in herbs, not for taste, for warding. Sickness is a creeping thing, and he has seen too many winters to let it catch him unaware. He pulls a heavy fur cloak over his shoulders, bones worn into the shape of work. He steps outside. Frost cracks underfoot. Breath steams from his lips. The sky above is a dark indigo, the stars dimming but not yet gone. Behind him, the village stirs in dreams. Before him, the fields stretch like a frozen sea. In that thin moment between night and light, he does not speak. He simply listens. The wind, the hush of bare branches, the faint shifting of soil beneath frost. The world, half asleep. Near the communal well, a girl kneels in the dirt. Her hands are small, chapped. A twig between her fingers moves with quiet intent, carving slow circles into the earth. Protective signs, though no one taught them to her. She just knows. The symbols pass from hand to ground, like breath to lung, old as rain, forgotten as lullabies. Her eyes are steady. Her lips move, not in words, but in hums. She is not playing. She is remembering. In the weaver's cottage, fingers twist yarn through the loom with the precision of ritual. The woman weaving does not look at her hands. She does not need to. The pattern is in her bones, passed down like bread or birthmarks, wool and story interlaced, dyed with ash and elderberry. The spindle hums a tune the mind forgets, but the heart remembers, a lullaby for the old gods, the ones now buried beneath stone and cross. The warp tightens, threads gather. A bird taps once on the windowsill and flies off. The weaver does not pause. Her husband died in autumn, and grief weaves itself now into every fold. She does not cry, she pulls tighter. The village exists in layers, flesh and spirit, silence and murmurs. Behind the wooden church, built crooked, blessed in haste, the graveyard leans. Headstones sink sideways, as though time itself is tired. A boy walks barefoot through frost, thin wool wrapped around his shoulders. He carries a single pebble, no flowers. They do not grow now. He reaches the stone marked with his grandfather's name, though moss hides most of the letters. He places the pebble on top. A sign of memory, of visit, of love. No words are spoken, none are needed. The dead, after all, hear more in silence. The market square is nothing more than a patch of earth, worn thin by boots and hooves. But it holds more life than any chapel. Women trade turnips for flax. A man offers rabbit hides still warm. Children chase a wooden hoop, and someone's goat bleats in complaint, tied too tight to a cartwheel. Here, under a sky that threatens snow, a girl hears 3 pieces of news. A goat, black with a torn ear, has died in the night. Its heart stopped, no wound, just silence. A baby was born breech, and the midwife bled from her eyes after, and rain is coming. Not a storm, just a soft, steady falling, enough to turn roads to soup and roofs to song. She nods. She does not question the order of things. Life is like wool, sometimes knotted, sometimes smooth, but always moving forward, always. Evening will come, as it always does. First, the light will dim, not all at once, but like a breath being slowly let go. Then come the candles, lit with a whispered name or prayer, placed near hearthstones, near bread loaves. Barley stew will simmer, thick with root vegetables and the bones of last week's feast. Timber beams will creak. Someone will sing, low and wordless. But now, morning holds them. Each villager a thread in a tapestry woven tighter by cold and memory. The headman will count the hens, the girl will finish her symbols, the weaver will knot one last thread, the boy will walk back through frost, leaving no prints behind, and somewhere beyond the trees, the wolf will move through snow, silent now. The village breathes, waiting for what comes next, when the wind changes, and not all prayers are enough, when the howl no longer sounds like a reminder, but a warning, when the forest steps closer. In the half-light before dawn, hoarfrost clings to every surface, wooden wheelbarrows, bramble fences, the iron hinges of the smithy's door. It is the hour of held breath. A milkmaid steps barefoot from her cottage, cloak pulled tight, a pail in each hand. Her breath ghosts into the cold air, a silent offering to the waking world. Behind her the door closes, without a sound. Inside, embers sleep in the hearth, and a baby stirs beneath a woolen wrap, its fingers curling toward vanished warmth. The milkmaid walks slowly, her feet numb, her steps deliberate, as if the frost beneath her might crack and swallow her whole. The village is a constellation of need, each home its own flickering star. Within the crooked bones of every cottage, hands begin their ancient rituals. A midwife hums as she grinds elder bark into bitter powder. Her voice is not for beauty, but for the child laboring in the next room. A low groan escapes the walls, softer than the wind, louder than prayer. In a hut pressed close to the hedgerow, an old man threads waxed cord through a leather boot. His fingers tremble, not from cold, but from years. He has outlasted 4 winters too many, and each stitch is a quiet plea. One more season, just one. The thatch above groans under its snow-laden burden. The village breathes in creaks and sighs, bones of timber and thatch complaining softly beneath the weight of waiting. Then, a rooster crows. Not the first, but the one who is believed. His voice pierces the hush like a knife through cloth. The call ripples from rooftop to rooftop, through warped shutters and cracked panes, rousing men from straw-stuffed mattresses. It is the rooster of reckoning, the one the children call Father Dawn. Fires are coaxed from cinders, doors moan open, smoke rises from 100 chimneys, thin and uncertain. It dances upward like spirits released. In the long hall, the bailiff counts tools with gloved hands. Iron gleams in the torchlight, scythes like crescent moons, flails like knotted tails of giants. He nods to the reeve, who carries the weight of decisions like iron shackles. The reeve's eyes are sunken, not from age, but from knowing. He knows whose crops failed last year. He knows whose debts will not be paid. He knows who will not survive the next frost. At the edge of the village, the fields lie bare, furrowed like the brows of worried fathers. Wind dances over them with cruel delight, salting the soil with frost, scraping last year's barley stubble into brittle bones. Nothing moves, but a child does. She crosses the field alone, dragging a willow basket too large for her frame. Her feet are wrapped in linen scraps, her hands red and chapped. She walks as if the earth remembers her, as if the silence itself is her shadow. She leaves no footprints, only memory. Back within the hamlet, the blacksmith stands shirtless before his anvil, breath steaming from his chest like a warhorse. Sparks bloom around him, momentary stars dying in. Flight. He does not speak. He listens. To the bell. It tolls once, then again. Not a call to arms, but a pulse, measuring time as the body measures pain. The sound threads its way through every home, every hall, every heart. It echoes in the chest, like mourning. The church stands proud, small, but resolute. Its stones are ancient, softened by rain and the weight of generations. They are not just built, They are worn smooth by kneeling, by grief, by hope. Ivy clings to its sides like veins. Inside, the priest lights candles with fingers blackened by ink and ash. He writes the names of the dead in a ledger older than the kingdom itself. Some names are crossed out. Others are never written, lost in childbirth, buried in frost, forgotten in famine. No one speaks of order here. They live it. It is not enforced. It is inherited. It hums in the shared tools, in the silent barter of bread for herbs, in the rhythm of sowing and reaping, in the hush that falls when snow comes too soon. It lives in the pause before a question, in the nod passed between neighbors, in the way a boy stands aside so his sister may eat first, in the way the reeve never eats before the widows, in the way the bell rings not for mass, but for mercy. This village was not built. It grew, like lichen on stone, like moss in shadow. It clings to the land, to memory, to suffering. Fences do not hold it together. Ritual does, and breath, and silence. Now, as dawn crests the distant hills in a thin blade of light, a dog barks once, then stops. A woman steps from her doorway, hands dusted with flour, eyes to the sky. She feels it. The shift. Not in weather, but in time. For winter has settled not only in the soil, but in the hearts of men. And something is coming. A silence deeper than snow. A hunger older than fire. A reckoning wrapped in velvet shadows. And still, the bell rings, and still, the fire is tended, and still, the child walks across the field. Toward what? Only the next chapter will tell. A single candle burns in the window of the herb wife's hut, its wax melted into a small molten crown. The flame flinches with each breath of the wind, as if it, too, is afraid of the fog that creeps in from the marshlands. The air is thick, heavy with silence and something else. Something older than cold. Mist coils around the low thatched roofs like a ghost with no name. It swallows the paths first, then the fences, then the corners of cottages where stories sleep. This is the hour that belongs to neither night nor morning, a breath caught between worlds. Inside, behind shuttered windows, the village begins to stir. A spoon brushes clay in a hesitant circle. A woolen sleeve pulls tighter around thin arms. A child's whimper fades beneath the hush of a mother's voice. No words, just warmth. These sounds do not seek attention. They are offerings to the morning, made without ceremony, known only to the walls and the hearths that hold them. The village does not rise in unison. It exhales slowly, through the daily acts that define it, the grind of stone on grain, the draw of water from deep earth, the tightening of laces with fingers still half dreaming. Time is not measured here by bells or sun, but by tasks, by the rhythm of survival. Near the dovecote, a figure crouches, cloaked in brown and the breath of birds. The falconer's hands are worn, stained with the trace of meat, ash, and age. He lifts a broken feather, inspecting its edge with the care of a monk handling relics. He does not speak to his hawks. He murmurs, clicks, breathes. These sounds are older than names. They belong to wind and bone and sky. The hawk, blindfolded by leather, still as a carved god, waits. And above, the fog parts just enough to reveal the pale sun, watching. The falconer knows what others do not. That power does not always wear a crown. Sometimes it watches with talons. Across the square, the carpenter's hand runs along the frame of the chapel door. His fingers find each groove and knot like a priest reading scripture from wood grain. He does not rush. He listens to the timber, for cracks, for silence, for the soft groan of old nails. Here, wood is more than structure. It is testament. A child stands a few paces away, cradling a small wooden horse, chipped, earless, but sacred. He does not gallop it through imagined fields. He studies it, measures its weight, learns from its stillness. In this village, children do not grow up by years, but by hands, by how they carry, how they mend, how they listen to what does not speak. By the well, the alewife moves like clockwork. Her hair is bound in braids that whisper of grandmothers long buried. She pours the thick, yeasty mash into barrels, steam curling around her face like breath from the underworld. She hums, low, steady, circular, a song passed down by mouths too tired to sing it whole. It has no words, only the rhythm of waiting. One mark of chalk per barrel. A system. No outsider would notice, but one older than ink. Her fingers carry knowledge carved from loss, from seasons when the barley failed, when the river froze early, when laughter became too costly. Still, she hums, because humming fills the silence between hope and hunger. And still, there is motion. The smith's hammer has not yet rung, but the embers are waking. The shepherd's dog circles the pen, already alert. A spindle whirls in a corner window, turning wool into thread with the soft click of faith. These are not labors imposed, they are inherited. From the dead, from the soil, from the things that don't change, even when everything else does. There is no scribe here. No map marks this village's borders, but everyone knows where it begins. In the ache of their joints, in the soot beneath their nails, in the stories they do not tell, only show. The herb wife steps outside, her candle extinguished by the damp. She lifts her skirts from the mud, basket in hand. Today she seeks valerian, maybe yarrow. Maybe not. The marsh speaks to her, not in words but in the shimmer of dew, in the tilt of crow's flight. She does not answer. She listens. Every plant she gathers carries a memory, a fever soothed, a child buried, a birth survived. She touches each stem like a relic, knowing which to crush, which to boil, which to hide from curious eyes. She is both feared and needed, a keeper of balances, a quiet ledger of pain and mercy. In the fields beyond, the scarecrow leans like a drunk monk, arms outstretched in eternal supplication. Birds rest on him now. Even fear has learned to sleep. The fog begins to lift only slightly, revealing boots at the edge of the road, not villagers' boots. New leather hardened by travel. A figure stands there, watching. No torch, no horse, just stillness and a cloak damp with distance. Someone has come. But the village does not notice yet. It cannot afford to. Its eyes are downcast, fixed on dough that must rise, stitches that must hold, fences that must not fail again. It is in these tasks that they pray. Because faith is not spoken aloud here. It is kneaded into bread. It is stitched into tunics. It is bound in the quiet ways they care for one another, by leaving a loaf on a doorstep, by mending a boot without asking, by singing to a baby not their own. The sun, faint and white, climbs above the horizon, not with glory, but with resolve, a pale promise of warmth. And with it, the day begins, not with bells or proclamations, but with a breath, a step, a gesture. Somewhere, a crow calls once, then vanishes into the smoke of morning fires. And the village moves again. The stranger at the edge of the road does not enter. Not yet, but soon. For this village, for all its bone-deep knowing, does not yet see what shadows have begun to move just beyond the trees. What tremors whisper beneath the soil. What news rides the wind from the next valley over. They do not yet know what is coming, but they feel it. In their silence, in their sleep, in the way the hawk tilts its head toward the east, not in fear but in warning, and so the candle goes out, and something begins. It begins in silence, not absence, but a living quiet, the hush of soil, the creak of branches, the breath of oxen in their stalls. The village is still, but not asleep. Beneath every shuttered window, someone listens. The Lord's Hall stands at the crest of the hill, its wattle and daub walls streaked with soot, its door bound in iron. There, the steward awakens to a ledger unfinished, his fingers ink-stained, the wax seals cold. He counts not coins, but obligations, whose pig must be tithed, whose fence mended, whose son sent to train with the squire. Below him, the homes cluster like birds around a fire. A cooper rolls a half-finished barrel, his breath steady, hands worn. A woman tends to a sick goat with crushed garlic and a whispered prayer. Her hair is bound with linen, her eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. She does not ask for healing. She works. The fields beyond are veiled in mist. A plowman stands at the edge, hand on the wooden shaft, waiting for light. Not for guidance, but for visibility. He knows the land by touch, by taste, by scars. The soil bears names he cannot speak aloud. Back near the well, a girl dips her hands into the cold water, not to drink, but to feel. Her fingers trace the stones, slick with moss. She listens, not for voices, but for presence. Water speaks to those who are silent. This is how the village holds itself together, not by decree, but by repetition. Every step on muddy paths, every shared meal of leek and lentil, every blessing muttered over a broken cartwheel. It is not governance, it is belonging. The village is not a place, but a rhythm passed through generations, wrapped in breath and bread and the weight of the same sky. But rhythm does not mean peace. There is a crack in the day, just wide enough for unease to seep through. A rider crests the northern ridge, cloak dark with dew, his horse breathing steam. He bears no banner, but the way the children scatter before him says enough. No herald comes without hunger following close behind. The steward hears the hoofbeats and stiffens. His eyes flick toward the half-sealed letters on the table, toward the tally scratched in haste. Grain stores, livestock, men fit for levy. He does not rise to greet the rider. He waits, still as the frost beginning to pearl the outer lintel. Down the slope, in the blacksmith's yard, a fire stirs. Not from bellows, but from instinct. The smith strikes iron before he knows why, shaping something unnamed, unfinished. Sparks leap like warnings, but he does not flinch. His daughter, just 12, tightens the bands around the water buckets without being told. Fear is not new here. It lives beside the hearth. The rider dismounts. His boots crush frost and fallen straw. He speaks only one sentence to the steward. The baron calls for dues and men. There is no protest, only a breath held in the lungs of the village. What is a village, after all, but a ledger waiting to be spent? The steward nods. Behind his eyes, memories stir. Of boys who left wearing borrowed mail, never returning even in stories. Names are read like prayers. Alric, son of the wheelwright. Mabon, with the crooked foot but strong arms. Tom, who once stole apples and now must carry a spear. Their mothers say nothing. One woman places a dried sprig of yarrow into her son's palm. Another binds a charm to his belt, a scrap of wool, a bone bead. These are not protections. They are farewells, dressed as hope. At the edge of the wood, the plowman watches the gathering with a silence that aches. He knows the call is not only for soldiers. It is for wheat, for oxen, for carts and ropes and bread that has not yet been baked. He will plow longer days now. He will bury seed with a prayer sharper than steel. The girl at the well has not moved. Her fingers drip with cold. She knows before it is said aloud, the goat will be taken. Her mother will give it, not with grace, but with necessity. And tomorrow, they will eat barley broth and pretend it fills the stomach. Still, the village does not break. It bends, quietly, ritually. The cooper will build carts instead of barrels. The blacksmith will shape nails for siege engines he will never see. The baker will stretch flour thin and still find a crust to give to the widow with no sons. No rebellion is planned. No cries rise against the baron. But resistance lives in smaller acts. In a girl's refusal to cry, in a man's choice to sing while he sharpens his scythe, in the way they do not forget the names of the taken. Night falls like a drawn curtain. The writer is gone. The steward closes the ledger with hands that tremble slightly. He seals the wax not with pride, but with grief. Inside the hall, candles gutter low. The wind slips through the shutter cracks, bringing with it the scent of turned earth and distant fires. Someone coughs in the darkness. Someone else begins a prayer. Not loud, just enough to remember. Outside, the stars prick through the cloud cover like old wounds reopening, and the village breathes again, not because it is healed, but because it must. In the morning, someone will fix the wheel on the broken cart. Someone will sow winter rye into soil grown thin from years of giving. The girl at the well will return, her fingers red with cold, her eyes watching the water for signs. And somewhere beyond the edge of knowing, a hawk will turn in the gray sky, its shadow passing briefly over the fields. Silent, swift, and gone. The rhythm holds. But now it holds something heavier. And just beyond the hill, where the fog never fully lifts, a distant bell rings. Not for death, not yet, but for movement, for change. Something comes,